You think Nico's gonna be mad? What is up, watch fam? I am Christian, and today I'm at London Jewelers Manhasset Watch Salon, and I'm going to be talking about two watches I am double wristing, one from Omega and one from Hublot, that I don't see that get a lot of attention, and I want to give them some attention. And I'll talk about this one second, but I actually love this Hublot. Like, sneak peek to the end of the video, I think this is an unbelievable watch. I know that Hublot gets a lot of criticism on the internet. I think this is unreal, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But let's start here with Omega. Obviously we all know that there are a million, obviously not a million, but there's a host of Speedmaster options out there. There's kind of, one for everybody. But I think what's so incredible about how Omega has designed this collection is every Speedmaster is not just in a different color or different size. They really do have different personality. And they have a logical connection to the event, and I'll get that in a second, that they're paying homage to. Apollo 8. In 1968, the Apollo 8 crew became the first crew to venture off to the dark side of the moon. So if you are a Pink Floyd fan, that is super cool, and if you are also an Omega fan, they paid homage to that incredible achievement with the release of many Dark Side of the Moon watches, but this one particularly is, I think, unbelievable. It's large, at 44 millimeters, so it is 2 millimeters larger than we're used to seeing, Speedmasters. But particularly with this strap, I think it actually wears pretty small. I actually think, and please comment down below with your thoughts, I think that this watch actually fits well on my just under 7-inch wrist, 6 3/4 inch wrist, which is unusual. Sometimes I'll wear a 40 millimeter watch that I think is too large, and you guys sure should always let me know that it's too large. But I actually think that this watch works pretty well. But that's not even the beginning of why this watch is so cool. Let's zoom in really close here. How did they incorporate this idea of the dark side of the moon? Not just in the blacked out case and dial and instrumentation, but also on the movement itself. There's a super discreet and subtle moon pattern that I actually did not notice. I saw the pattern and I thought it was beautiful, but I didn't even connect it to the moon at first. In doing research, I found out that it was the moon, and now it makes perfect sense. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is not that it doesn't look like the moon, but rather it's so discreet and so tasteful and not cartoonish and not silly at all, which is really kind of what a lot of this stuff can be very easily. It can come off cheap or obvious, but this has just been done so well. Even if you get really, really close in macro, the font, the Omega and the Speedmaster, is all raised so well, as if it was a big sign that they actually, put on top of the dark side of the moon. Really nice touch. Omega's become actually pretty well known at this point now for these super precise techniques. We've seen it in some of their moon phases in the past. We've seen it on some of the stars in the moon phases. Omega's doing a fantastic job, maybe better than anyone in their price range. We do have an exposed sapphire case back here, which gives you a peek at the beautiful 1861 movement, but you also see into the movement a bit from the front as well. This has kind of a skeleton, vibe. It's not a full skeleton, but you can see into the movement when the chronograph is activated specifically. I think that that's a really nice touch. I think it's really beautiful. And if you're going to do that, you've got to finish well, which Omega did do. The movement is not just finished well, it's finished, stylistically with the rest of the watch, which is, in theory, unnecessary, right? Omega could have just plopped in the standard movement right into the watch and it would have been, I suppose, quality-wise equal, right? It's the same piece, but they really went the extra mile here on the logical finishing to really take this watch to the next level, really to elevate it. Just under $10,000, you'd be hard pressed to find a chronograph that has taken this big of a bite, right? Taken on this much design-wise and in theory and everything, and done so well with it. I had never tried this watch on before 15 minutes ago, and I genuinely think it's one of my favorite Speedmasters in production. So a fantastic watch. I'm absolutely impressed. And one last note. What's kind of cool also is, even though this is certainly a moon Speedmaster, stylistically it is, I think, throwing back a little bit to the early Speedmaster racing heritage, right? Between the yellow instrumentation and obviously this rally type strap. I like that. It's not obvious. I think the average consumer probably would miss that. I don't know if they would make the connection, but Omega did a fantastic job, top to bottom. Next watch, and now this is something more controversial. Hublot is a brand that is very often criticized. A very successful brand globally, no doubt, but in the watch community, I think that Hublot has had a hard time extending that olive branch. They've had a hard time, becoming accepted by a lot of the folks that consider themselves, die hard or whatever it might be, really knowledgeable folks. But I have to direct your attention to this watch, because if there's ever been a Hublot or Hublot that kind of would make you get it, make you say, okay, I get what the brand stands for, it's this watch. This is their Unico Sapphire Chronograph, 42 millimeters, which is brought down from 44. It has a new, slimmer movement, which we'll talk about in a second. But I'm a dress watch guy. Period, end. And I've resisted the allure of sports watches, and I've really resisted this more modern, popularization of these carbon sapphires, et cetera, these, kind of like professional sports, like tennis watches. I've stayed far away. They just don't do it for me, even stylistically, right? But this watch is awesome, which is an automatic winding chronograph with a 72-hour power reserve. And if you look at the movement itself, both from the front and the back, it's absolutely beautiful. Hublot finished this watch with precision, and not just the finishing, but even the architecture. It's actually just a pretty movement. The full date wheel is visible from the front of the dial. I don't necessarily know if this is super legible. Right now I can definitely tell it's the 24th, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you that from further out, not a chance. But one of the biggest critiques that we have with watches in general all of the time is date window execution. And while you do give up a little bit on the legibility end, on the function, of course, not only is the date not a detractor, but as you get close in, I think that the date all the way around the dial is super attractive. I think that people will actually be more likely to buy this watch as they get closer and look at this, which is generally the opposite of how date windows are received. The chronograph action on the Unico 2 is unbelievable. It's so sensitive, it's so buttery. I can't think of another chronograph that has this incredible soft touch. It's stunning. The sapphire case is almost weightless. When I hold this watch in my hand, all I really feel is the movement in the pushers. And on the wrist, not only does it fit really well, but the lugs articulate, giving you that little extra room. The only criticism that I can see is that it's a limited watch. They're only making 500 of them, and I understand that because the market, I'm sure, is small for a watch so specific. But in my mind, that's the shame here. The case itself, I think, is perfectly proportioned. I don't think it's bulbous. The lugs are short. I think for 42 millimeters, it fits very, very small. I think it wears considerably smaller than most sports watches at 40, probably because of the short and tapered lugs. Retail price is just under $70,000, which is a ton of money, of course. But if you're talking about an in-house chronograph, and one that is actually this good, not just in architecture, not just in finishing, but also in its actual function, in a sapphire case, which in and of itself is unbelievable, almost no one's competing with this, I think that at the price point, I hate to say it, everyone's gonna get mad, but I don't know if you're gonna find a better competitor. I don't think you're gonna find a watch that's going to beat this for what it is, meaning sports automatic chronograph in-house category. I don't think you can beat this watch. Moving yourself from any preconceived notions about the brand. The three biggest criticisms of Hublot by some watch community members generally, the size, the movement, and the very strong Hublot design language, the style itself. But what could Hublot have done better with this watch? They sized it down, brought it to 42 millimeters with, in my opinion, perfect proportions. This is one of the best fitting sports watches, number one. Number two, the movement is the updated in-house movement that is not just in-house, but architected incredibly well throughout. Absolutely beautiful from every angle that I can tell, and with a sapphire watch, you can see every single angle. And then from a design standpoint, I don't think that this is crazy loud or over-branded. I think that the average person on the street might think that this is just like a Casio, for God's sakes. I don't think that an average person is going to think, like, wow, what an obnoxious watch. I think that even the branding, the way that Hublot signed the watch, a very small signature on the top sapphire, they completely resisted any urge to over-brand. And they even stuck with their core design principle, this idea of fusion. So I gotta ask you, what could Hublot have done better here? I'm blown away by this watch. I came here to London today to look at the Cartier the Must de Cartier, and I ended up with this on my wrist. Sometimes watches are that good. Again, I know it's nuts. I'm a Cartier guy, and when I came here, no one told me to go grab this watch, right? I actually gravitated toward it. I would love to own this watch. I'm not kidding. I would love to own this watch, which I don't think is something you ever thought you'd hear me say. If nothing else, come and try this watch on. The Hublot Unico 2 Sapphire. That says a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are in the general New York area, come and visit London Jewelers Watch Salon. Their collection of watches is unbelievable. I've been coming here for almost 2 years now, and still I'm surprised at what I see, right? Still I can't believe, like, oh crap, they have that. You know, it's fantastic. So come in, say hello, and maybe we'll see you here.